but actually, before I could cuss, Uncle JD goes, Jesus Christ, white Uncle Jimmy? Yeah, that's exactly what I would have said, yeah. So, small point, but, little bitty guy, he was paying attention, unfortunately, but he was paying attention and he was, making connections. Okay, this means this is what I'm supposed to do, this is the right thing. So, I like to say to people, I think I'm somewhat responsible for introducing him to religion. But I will tell you, he truly is, now, he is a man of faith. So, despite his heathen uncle, he went down the right path. So, he's a little bit bigger now. He was a little bit maybe bigger, too big to stand on the seat. And I remember one time he came up and he said, I know how to spell my name. Wasn't in school yet, but, I know how to spell my name. Oh, really? Go ahead. J.D. Pretty good. And the last thing that I'll tell you, and this really struck me because, again, he's a smart kid, he was a good kid, he always has been. I like to walk. We were in Middletown at my sister Lori's house. It was a beautiful, warm summer night in Middletown. I went on for a walk and JD wanted to go with me, and while we walked, he was asking questions. And one of the questions he asked me, and I remember this, is, Uncle Jimmy, are you rich? And I said, no, I'm not rich. I'm a working man. And, I work hard. And your Aunt Donna works hard. She was a nurse. And we have enough money that we can afford to pay our bills. And sometimes we can afford to buy things that we want. But no, I'm not rich. And another question that he asked me while we were walking, and this struck me because, again, here's a kid thinking about politics way before I was even, at his age, I was even aware of things. But he said, are you a Democrat? And I said, no, I used to be, but I'm not anymore. And I was a Democrat because my mom and dad were Democrats. And I asked my dad, why are you a Democrat? He goes, well, that was the party of the working man. And I said, no, not anymore. So that's why I am no longer a Democrat and why I switched. My mom loved JFK. She thought he hung the moon.
Yep.
And do you remember JFK saying, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country? If a Democrat today said that, they burst into flames. I'll never say that. So, just think about, here's a kid, even then was thinking, what's the right thing to do? What's important to people? What matters? And so, he's been thinking about this for a long time, and I know he's going to do the right thing. So let me take the time now to just introduce my little nephew, J-Don.
Good evening, everybody. It's great to be here. Thanks to Uncle Jimmy for doing this introduction. So we've been doing this No BS tour for the last couple of months. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this because I think it's important for you all to get exposure to the people who want your vote, get an opportunity to ask me questions without just seeing me on TV or hearing about me on the radio or maybe even seeing television advertisements, positive or negative, because there's been plenty of negative advertisements on me. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But one of the things we thought is it'd be fun to actually have my family come around and introduce me instead of a political person, because they actually obviously know who I am and have a little bit more opportunity to provide some background. So we had my dad first, we had my sister out on the trip, we had my Uncle Jimmy's younger sister, Aunt Wee, we've had my sister, his daughter, my cousin Rachel was actually the first person to ever encourage me to join the Marine Corps. Was my cousin Rachel, and now we've got Uncle Jimmy. So it's been a lot of fun, and I like doing this. This is my favorite part of campaigning. I'd say is getting out and doing these town halls. But it makes it a little bit more fun when you've got your family along for the ride. And I've also got it's long days. You come out and we started in Strongsville at 8:30 this morning, which is the northeastern part of the state. We're down here for the last event. We'll get home probably around 10 o'clock. But I've got this photo of Uncle Jimmy tapped out. But today I look back and I thought, well, he's taking a rest or he had a stroke, one or the other. So make sure he's all right back there. But what I'll do is I'll tell you a little bit about myself, and then while I'm talking, I'd love for you to think about questions you're interested in asking. I'll answer as many questions as we have time for. I think it's they can be hard questions, they can be easy questions. Hopefully some easy questions, not just some hard ones. But we'll take as many hard ones as we get. I grew up in Middletown, Ohio, and my family all comes from Appalachia, not Appalachian, Ohio, actually Appalachian, Kentucky. That's where my mama and papa are from, his parents. And they all moved from southeast Kentucky coal country to Middletown, Ohio, because Middletown, Ohio was to my family the land of opportunity, where you could support a family on a single middle class steelworker's income so long as you worked hard and played by the rules. That was the American dream to Mama and Papa, and that's what allowed them to support their family in comfort and prosperity. And one of the things that happened to towns like Middletown is our leaders, and I hate to say it, our bipartisan leaders, because it was Democrats, but also some Republicans decided that America didn't need to make things anymore. And when we made that decision, we lost that engine of prosperity and American might that made towns like Middletown prosperous, but also made our whole country free and independent and self-sufficient. And you think about all the things that we used to make in this country, things that were invented in this country that our leaders decided the Mexicans or the Chinese or whoever else could make them. And so we maybe got some cheaper plastic stuff from China or wherever else, but we lost a lot of those good middle class jobs. And we didn't just lose that, we lost our American character as a people who make things, right? We're not just consumers of things, we're not just people who go and buy things, we actually used to make things in this country, and we don't do enough of that anymore. I think about, I've had a very blessed life. I grew up in Middletown. Went to the Marine Corps, went to Ohio State from there, went to law school at Yale, graduated from there, and had a business in Cincinnati for the past 4 or 5 years. My life has worked out better than I could have ever hoped it would. And I think about, I take my kid to the pharmacy, because kids get ear infections all the time, right? We have a 2-year-old, he gets ear infections all the time. And 95% of the pharmaceuticals that we consume in this country are made in China. And do we trust the Chinese to make healthy, safe, and effective drugs for our children?
Nope.
Do we trust the Chinese to make the computer chips that go in everything from our cars to our appliances to the missiles that our military and our troops rely on to keep themselves safe and keep us safe as well? Ladies and gentlemen, this decision that our leaders made, frankly, it's part of the reason why we have the crisis that we have in Russia and Ukraine right now. Because over the past couple of years, we took American energy independence, okay? We talk about making stuff. The most important thing we can make, ladies and gentlemen, is the lifeblood of the economy, which is energy, which I know here in Lancaster, you guys know quite a bit about, all right? By the way, so it's Lancaster, right? Yeah. Okay. All right.
It depends
I've been here
which end of the street you're on.
It was like the 4th of July Memorial Day parade last year. And one of the guys who works for me is out there, Brian. He's a great guy. He's our political director. If you're interested in volunteering, he's the guy to talk to. But Brian is so nervous that I'm going to say Lancaster. So I thought about coming in and saying, "Well, it's great to be in Lancaster," because I knew it would give him a heart attack. But he was worried. So why do we have the world's greatest energy reserves, and yet we can't explore them? A lot of people won't even invest in oil and natural gas anymore because of stupid policies set by our leaders. The idea that we're going to transition to an economy based on solar panels and windmills has empowered the Russians more than any decision that we've made in the last 10 years, the destruction of American energy independence, okay? The Europeans, which, by the way, are far more affected by what's going on in Ukraine than we are, right? It's their continent. It's not our continent, thank God. The Germans cannot even make their own energy. They can't even prevent themselves from buying Russian energy because they decided to double down on the green energy economy, okay? Again, a thing that destroyed a lot of middle-class jobs, and we know Southeastern Ohio has a great energy economy if we would actually let it unfold and let it work the right way. But it's not just the loss of those middle-class jobs, it's the loss of our self-sufficiency, of our economic power, of our economic might. And what really bothers me, ladies and gentlemen, this is the fundamental problem, I think, in our country and our leadership, is that instead of accepting their own failure, instead of acknowledging what they have done to this country, our leaders have decided to divide us against each other and to distract us from their own failure by constantly talking about racism, about sexism, about all the isms that the American people are apparently so afflicted with. Okay? And I'm sick of that, right? I'm sick of being called a bad person because I want to live in a country with a real border. I'm sick of being called a bad person because I think that Americans should make things in this country. And I'm sick of our leaders dividing us against each other instead of doing their job and making this country more prosperous, more free, and more capable of defending itself. Now let me just give you an example. Let me give you two examples, actually, of the way this works in practice. They rob us blind with one hand. They distract us with identity politics in the other. So you may know Jen Psaki. She is the White House press secretary. You guys know who she is, and you're all laughing, right? Now, I got to tell you, my dad, who we brought on the first leg of the tour, he came with me. I brought him to the Trump rally in Lorain County, Ohio, which is sort of northeastern part of the state. Probably a year ago at this point. And we went up there, and the thing that he can't get over is that Trump was talking about Jen Psaki, and he called her the woman with the unusually red hair. Whenever I think about Jen Psaki, I think the woman with the unusually red hair. I can't get that middle image out of my head. So anyway, they asked Jen Psaki about inflation. Okay, we've had an inflation crisis for pretty much since Biden took over, of course, because he's spending way too much money and he's not investing enough in American manufacturing and American industry. Now, it's worse now. But remember, a few months ago, it was clear that we had an inflation problem. They asked Jen Psaki about Janet Yellen, who's the Treasury Secretary, the most important economic official in this country. They said, well, what is Janet Yellen doing about inflation? And I forget the exact wording she used, but if you actually, what she basically said was, look, before I answer that question, let's all take a moment to appreciate that Janet Yellen is the first female Treasury Secretary. And I remember thinking, well, who cares? Right?
Right.
We don't care if it's a man, a woman, a black person, a white person doing the job. We care about whether the person is doing the job and doing the job well. But that shows how they operate, right? Don't you dare worry about inflation, because remember, the most important economic official in this country is a woman. Let's celebrate the fact that she's a woman, even as she is not doing the job and our whole government isn't doing the job that we should be doing, okay? Now, there's nowhere where this is more true, where the accusations of racism and sexism try to shut up normal Americans. Hey, come on, please. Yeah, don't let me go. No, thank you. I know it's hard. It's busy, and you gotta listen to me while you come through. That's the hardest part. But there's no way where you hear this accusation of racism used as a weapon against normal people than in the U.S. southern border. Okay, because I'm sure if you look at what I say about immigration. If you look at anybody who talks about this issue, what always happens when you say, well, we got to get control of the southern border, we got to stop the nonstop flow of drugs, of sex trafficking, of illegal aliens across the southern border of this country, what do they always say? Okay, you're a racist, right? You're a racist for wanting to have a secure southern border. And I always remind people of my own family history with this, because we don't care about the southern border, ladies and gentlemen, because we hate anybody. We care about the southern border because we love our own country, we love our citizens, and we want the people here to have their government look out for them. So let me just take a brief detour and explain why this is personal to me. If you know anything about my life, my family, my mom struggled with opioid addiction for a big chunk of my early childhood. That's why I was actually raised by my mama and papa's, because mom couldn't take care of me for a long time. And I remember in 2013, I was about to graduate from law school. I just proposed to the woman who's now my wife and the mother of my 3 kids. And I got a phone call from my sister back home in Middletown. And she said, JD, mom just had a heroin overdose. She's lying in a coma in a hospital. I don't really know what's going on. I talked to the doctors. And what was obvious is she had gotten into some bad stuff. And it wasn't clear whether she'd wake up or not. And I remember thinking to myself, my mom, she's so smart and she's so sweet, but this thing is going to kill her. Whether it kills her today or tomorrow, eventually I was certain, I even thought to myself, this woman that I'm about to marry, we're going to have a family, and my mom is never going to meet the grandchildren that come out of our marriage. She's never going to meet my own children. I was so sad about that. And one of the things I love about this country is, as certain as I was that mom would never have a second chance, I was wrong, right? This is a country of second chances. It's one of the things I love about the American dream. It's not just for everybody who makes the right decisions all the time. It's for somebody who screws up and gets back on the horse. So 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, are we Bengals fans down here?
Oh, yeah.
Still, all right, mostly, all right. Well, okay, nobody's perfect. So, but you know, we drove up to Middletown. We live in Cincinnati, and we drove up to Middletown, and it was the day that the Bengals beat the Tennessee Titans, the second playoff victory, that great run that they made. And we went to Middletown before that game, and we watched Mom receive her 7-year medallion at Narcotics Anonymous because she's been clean and sober for 7 years, right? Think about that.
That's wonderful. Wonderful.
9 years ago, ladies and gentlemen, I was certain that my mom would never meet my children, and now she is the best grandma to those 3 grandchildren that I could have ever asked for. She's been clean and sober for 7 years. She spoils them a little bit, right? She doesn't always brush their teeth before they go to bed. That's all right. My wife cares about that more than I do. But that is what is possible in this country, so long as people make good decisions, so long as people take advantage of the opportunities available to them. But I am certain, ladies and gentlemen, that if the fentanyl that is made in China and is coming through our southern border in 2022 is the same stuff that would have existed in this country in 2013, that my mom would not have had that second chance.
Right.
Because we've never had deadlier and more dangerous stuff on our streets than we have right now. And by the way, it's gone up 400% since Joe Biden took the oath of office. Think about all the moms denied a second chance. Think about all the children orphaned because of this. Think about all the, I would imagine that how many of us know grandparents who are taking care of grandbabies they never expected to take care of because of this terrible problem. And it is a problem that our leaders are letting get worse and worse and worse. It's disgusting, ladies and gentlemen. We don't care about the southern border because we hate anybody. We care about it because we love our own citizens and we love our own country. We don't think that children should grow up orphaned in this country. We don't think that our community should be overrun with drugs. And it's not just drugs. I hate to say this. I would not have believed this a year ago, but I was in Youngstown right before our baby was born, actually, because our third child was born right before Christmas. And we were doing a town hall up in the Mahoning River Valley. And a woman who came up to me, she does Christian ministry, and one of the things they do is they work with sex trafficking. And she was telling me about 13 and 14-year-old boys from Guatemala who were brought into this country illegally by drug traffickers and then sold into sex slavery in our state. Think about that. That is what the southern border is doing. Does anybody want their children to grow up in communities where 13-year-olds are being sold into sex slavery? And this is disgusting stuff. This is what the porous southern border has done. It has made us a less safe, a less prosperous community, and we got to fight back against this Democrat idea that it's compassionate to let this stuff happen. That's what they always say. It's compassionate to let this happen at the southern border. It's not compassionate. It's not compassionate to the people south of the border. It's not compassionate to the people north of the border. And it's time to get control of this once and for all. And I got 3, thank you, sir. I got 3 ideas here. And I want you to hold me to this. I want you to hold me to these ideas when I come back here. And look, I'm going to be a senator who's accessible, who doesn't forget the people who got him to where he is. I want you to hold me to this because there are 3 things that I'm going to fight like hell to make sure happen. First of all, we need to complete Donald Trump's border wall at the U.S. southern border.
Amen. Amen.
And you may remember that there was never congressional authorization, there was never an appropriation of funds from the Senate or the Congress for that wall. How did it get built? Trump had to move money from one department to actually get that border wall because even the members of his own party were not supporting him on this. And I got to be honest with you, whatever tragedy, whatever your views are on what's going on in Russia and Ukraine, and of course it's tragic, it is pretty gross to me that the U.S. Senate bent over backwards to give Joe Biden $16 billion to send to the Ukraine. It took them a week to get $16 billion, and they could never get $4 billion to protect the sovereignty of this country. It shows you where their priorities are, and it shows those priorities are upside down. Number one, we're going to finish that border wall. Number two, ladies and gentlemen, we need to declare those Mexican drug cartels a terrorist organization.
Yes.
What they're doing to this country is destroying it, and we need the full force of the U.S. military focused on that problem and focused on it tomorrow. And the third thing we need to do is we need to cut off welfare to people who come into this country illegally.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
why does this matter? This matters because it is the promise of those benefits. I don't blame anybody for saying, look, this is the most generous country in the world, but we've got to send a signal that American generosity is for American citizens, not for people who break the laws of this country. That's a fundamental thing. We've got to send that message to people, or we're going to continue to have the drug trafficking, the sex trafficking, and 200,000 illegal aliens coming into this country every single year. And that's just one issue, okay? One issue where simple solutions, common sense, and a little bit of political courage can help us solve our problems. Now, we can go through every single issue. I'm not going to possibly get to it in the next few minutes. But big tech censorship. I hate the fact that they're censoring conservatives. They're controlling what we're allowed to say in this country. We could do something about it. We just need to send senators who aren't wagging their fingers at the tech CEOs and actually offering legislation to penalize these guys,
Yes.
to break them up for censoring conservatives in this country.
Absolutely.
Okay? Issue after
Yeah.
We've got an inflation crisis, okay?
Yeah.
We've got the rise of China right now, the biggest threat that we have faced in this country since the rise of Nazi Germany nearly 100 years ago. We've got serious problems, but we actually can solve them, okay? This is the message I want you to take away from all of this, is that, you know, most of the problems in this country were caused by Democrats who don't care about the country and weak-willed Republicans who refuse to fight against them, okay?
Yeah,
That is
absolutely.
simple. It
Absolutely.
really is that simple. This is not rocket science. America's decline, the problems that exist in this country, the fact that we're not as powerful and strong as a country as we were 30 years ago is a direct consequence of bad leadership. And the only way to fix it is to send better leadership. Do not believe the people who tell you America's worst days are behind us. They tell you that because they don't want you to get pissed off at them for failing to ensure that America's best days are actually ahead of us. Okay? That is an excuse, ladies and gentlemen. We can solve these problems. We just got to send people of good character with a little bit of willpower to do it. That's why I'm running for the Senate. Now, two more things and I'll shut up. Number one, I need all the support I can get. We're running a grassroots campaign. We're not running a campaign primarily based on the local parties, right? We haven't really gone after the local party endorsements. We're not running a campaign. You know, I do as much TV and radio as I can, but the reason we've done, 42, 43 town halls in the past 2 months is because I think it's important, like I said, for you to have access to the people who want to represent you. I think it's one thing to get to know somebody in the 30-second well-produced TV commercial. It's another thing to actually have a conversation with somebody and see how they handle some difficult questions. But the only way that works, the only way that style of campaigning works, is if the people in this room, I don't just need you to vote for me, I need you to tell people about me. I need you to go, post about us on Facebook, take photos, put it on social media, volunteer for us. We've got, over 500 volunteers who are working the phones for us all the time. There's a lot to do, there's a lot that you can help with, so please come up to us afterwards, come up to one of my staff members afterwards, and figure out how we can plug into this campaign. The second, just to give you an update on how the campaign is going, okay? The Republican primary has got 5 pretty well-funded candidates, and by the way, one of the things I've learned is that we need campaign finance reform in this country the past year.
Absolutely.
But, you play the game, you need a lot of resources to run, and there are 5 candidates with a lot of resources, okay? It's me, Mandel, Mike Gibbons, Matt Dolan, Jane Timken. I think one of those 5 people is going to be your nominee as a Republican, and then that person is going to eventually be elected to the U.S. Senate. So really, this is immediate action. This is the opportunity that you all have, I think, to really make a difference in this race. And I think at the end of the day, we're in a very good position to win. Now, there are good things and bad things about being in a good position. We had a lot of momentum early on, right? The good thing is you got a lot of momentum. The bad thing is $5 million of negative advertising came in this race against me, where people have tried to convince you and try to convince your friends and try to convince everybody that I'm an anti-Trumper, that I hate Donald Trump's guts. Which would of course be a shock to Donald Trump, because I saw him 2 weeks ago and we talked about this race, and he and I get along very well. But yeah, let me be honest with you. those advertisements. I didn't like Donald Trump in 2015. I didn't like Donald Trump. I didn't think that he was going to be a good president for this country, and I was wrong, and I was happy to be wrong. And the reason I've been publicly supportive of the president for several years now, the first death threat I ever got was in 2018 when I went on TV to defend Donald Trump in one of his Supreme Court nominations. That's always an interesting experience. Nobody forgets their first death threat. First speeding ticket, first death threat. It's all important things you got to go through in life. The thing I'll say about Trump, and there are all of these policies we could talk about, and I'm happy to talk about which policies I think were very good. Tax policy, energy policy, regulatory policy, all this stuff that he did, that he accomplished for people. He actually did what he said he was going to do, which hasn't happened really from a president in my lifetime at least. But more importantly, I think Trump, the gift of Trump, his first term at least, because I think he's going to run for president and win again in 24.
Yeah.
The gift is he ripped the Band-Aid off some of the corruption that exists in this country. I think he revealed something about the institutions in this country that frankly I didn't even appreciate. Like, just to give you one example, I would not have believed you if you had told me in 2016 that the Federal Bureau of Investigation would get an illegal wiretap to spy on a presidential candidate in this country. Now, even the New York Times admits that the FBI got an illegal wiretap. Okay?
Right.
Of course, nobody suffered any consequences. I'm sure that all of you, if you got an illegal wiretap on somebody, you wouldn't suffer any consequences either, right? Yeah, right. But that, to me, there was a revelation about something that was very broken about our country. That our institutions just don't work as well as they should. There's a lot of corruption out there. Remember General Mark Milley? The first time I ever talked to Donald Trump, it was probably a couple years ago for more than 5 minutes. It was very, I think about this a lot, because he was talking about how bad of a general Mark Milley was.
Yeah,
and this was before the Afghanistan debacle. And before Mark Milley said the biggest problem in the U.S. military was white race. Do you remember when Mark Milley said that? He's the most powerful general in our country right now. And I just remember thinking, if the generals of this country are this corrupt and this ineffective, we have got some very, very deep problems, and we realize that. Now, the bad stuff is, okay, we got some serious problems. The good thing is we're all woken up to it, right? We all know the challenges that we actually have to go against. I think that's a good thing. It's, if we're going to solve a problem, you got to see that problem clearly. Don't love the fact that for a long time I couldn't watch a Bengals or a Buckeyes game without seeing my fat head on TV and a negative advertisement. But the good thing is when they're going after you, they're going after you because we're actually making some waves and we're making some progress.
That's
the
true.
only way we're going to go from making progress
He's
and
telling
getting
the
momentum
truth.
to actually winning this race is with the support of all of you. I'd love to have it. I'd love to have your help, and I'm happy to take some questions now. But thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Speak loudly if you could, just so everybody can hear you.
I'll do my best. I'm assuming you know who Carol Quigley was and his book, Tragedy and Hope.
It sounds familiar, but why don't I know this book?
Well, when Clinton accepted his nomination, he gave special thanks to Carol Quigley, who had been his mentor.
Okay, yeah, of course.
And
Yep.
in his book, he says basically, and it's been going on since then and before, that there is no left and right.
That's
They're
right.
all on the same team. It's just so we can feel, oh, wonderful, our team won
Yep.
every 4 years or whatever. And what's going on now, as I see it, is it's not just that they need to close the borders because these people are coming in with their drugs. It's that the whole mess of them are bringing our country down so that they can have a new world order, a la Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum.
Sure.
And that's what I'd like you to talk about, because while I read about it several hours every day from good sources, I think, it's of course not being publicized, because that's what they're really doing. And one last question. Do you plan to join any secret societies?